So for once, here on Eberron Archaeologist, we're going to cover a recent topical subject. A book released within the last month, at least as of the time of the recording. It's technically not an Eberron book, but it is a book that's going to affect a lot of Eberron games using the 5th edition rules of D&D, and could hint at the direction of D&D going into the next few years. That book is Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. It's a 288-page hardcover book released on May 17, 2022 in North America, with an earlier release in a box set called the Rules Expansion Box Set, which came out January 25th, 2022, alongside reprints of Xanathar's Guide to and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. The book is primarily a compilation from two other books, Monsters from Volo's Guide to Monsters and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and races from those two sources, as well as a bunch of other books. However, the material is not directly reprinted. It has all been updated and rebalanced. There are a total of 33 race entries, counting each form of Genasi separately, and 258 monster stat blocks, if my counting is correct. Okay, so now we've covered the basics, let's look at some of the specific races have changed. Monsters of the Multiverse matches changes to races as made in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Ability scores are no longer included with races. Everything now either gives you +2 to one ability score of your choice and +1 to another, or +1 to 3 different ability scores. Overall, I think this is a constructive change, making non-traditional race class combinations better, plus reducing the amount of biological essentialism in D&D, which is also quite positive. The language rules also changed a bit. Basically, everyone gets to choose from 2 languages of their choice, again to make things more flexible than they were designed originally. None of the races originally presented as subraces or as having subraces are still using that rule concept at all. Subraces seem to be thrown out entirely. All the options are completely separate, mechanically distinct races now, with some having distinct in-race choices to make instead of choosing a subrace. So here's the full list of player races represented with updated rules. And as I go through them here now, I will picture the original sourcebook or books as well. Aarakocra, Aasimar, Bugbear, Centaur, Changeling, Deep Gnome, Duergar, Eladrin, Fairy, Firbolg, Genasi for each of the 4 main elements, Githyanki, Githzerai, Goblin, Harengon, Hobgoblin, Kenku, Kobold, Lizardfolk, Minotaur, Orc, Satyr, Sea Elf, Shadar-kai, Shifter, Tabaxi, Tortle, Triton, and Yuan-ti. So, Bugbear, Goblin, Hobgoblin, Orc, Changeling, and Shifter should jump out to you as appearing quite recently in Eberron Rising from the Last War. So they're the ones I want to focus on first. The 3 goblinoids, of course, were already updated in Eberron Rising from the Last War from how they appeared in Volo's Guide, among other sources, but we'll be comparing their stats from Eberron to the new version. Up first is a big change to all the goblinoids, a new Fey ancestry trait. The goblinoids are still explicitly humanoid by type, and have a note that they are all considered goblinoids by other rules, similar to how all of the elven races have been updated to be considered elves, but they get the same Fey ancestry trait that elves get. And that ability has changed from how it appears in the player's handbook. It only gives advantage against the charmed condition now. Using this new mechanic for Eberron's Dar, in my mind, doesn't make a lot of sense based on Eberron history. They have not been shown to be particularly strong-willed or resistant to any sort of mind-affecting magic. The world-building aspect of goblins being Fey creatures just doesn't make any sense either. In Eberron, they are very definitely native creatures to the material plane, not from Volantis at any point, where we know that elves and possibly gnomes have their origin. Goblinoids haven't had any sort of historical tie to fairies at all in Eberron, and based on my admittedly limited knowledge of them, not in other settings either. So this feels very much from left field. The Hobgoblin rules were playtested last year as Hobgoblin of the Feywild. And my feedback then was also, how does it make sense as a racial option based on Goblinoid history in D&D? At the time, I assumed it was for, well, Beyond the Witchlight, which hadn't released yet. And it was just an additional option, not a replacement for the main Hobgoblin rules. So, wouldn't have any effect on Eberron. So obviously that wasn't the case, and we'll have to get back on how to get rid of this potential damage this change will make later. For now, let's look at the other changes to the Goblinoids. Beyond Fey ancestry, the Bugbear is mostly otherwise unedited. The Dark Vision, long-limbed, and powerful build features are unchanged more or less. Sneaky got an extra bonus of being able to stop in spaces that small creatures can occupy without squeezing, and Surprise Attack is not limited to only being used once per turn. If you can surprise a group of enemies and hit them all in the first round, they each receive the bonus damage. These changes all feel true to traditional depictions of bugbears in Eberron. The Goblin is mostly the same as well, its biggest change coming to how much damage and how often you can use their ability, Fury of the Small. It's tied to proficiency bonus and not level now. They still feel on par with depictions of the Dar in canon beyond the big change. The Hobgoblin is the Goblinoid most heavily changed. Their two abilities before were Martial Training, which gives 2 weapon proficiencies, and Saving Face, letting you add a bonus to a failed roll equal to the number of allies that would see the failure. The new book has the weapon training gone entirely, and Saving Face is now called Fortune from the Many, and is limited to your proficiency bonus worth of daily uses instead of once per short rest. The Hobgoblin also gets a brand new ability that lets them use Help as a bonus action a limited number of times per day. And starting at 3rd level, bonuses are added to that Help action, like giving temporary hit points, moving allies, or bonuses to their next attack. This new ability feels very Hobgoblin-y to me, as they are all about military, structure, and clan. Even among the more lawless Galdar clans, cooperation is key. So this can be thought of like the ability to take command and inspire the troops. However, the new ability is called Fey Gift, so the Fey ancestry criticism comes back. Again, I'll circle back on how I will personally handle the Fey Goblinoid question in a later section of the video. What about how the Dakani Goblinoids from exploring Eberron are affected by these new mechanics? Well, the Dar don't conflict at all with the new presentation of the Goblinoids in Monsters of the Multiverse. That is because, as they were presented in Exploring Eberron, the subraces of Goblinoids of Dakan mechanically were complete variants of the Goblin, Hobgoblin, and Bugbear, with entirely different mechanics, though sharing a few as well. so no need to worry about having to change these if you just want to use them as written. Though I might argue they may now be less interesting options than the new versions of the Goblinoids. I'll get back to that later in the video. Let's look at the changes to the rest of the Eberron races now. So, on to the Orcs. Orcs don't have any big fundamental changes like a type change, but its abilities have been altered a lot. Dark Vision and powerful builds stay in place, but Aggressive was transitioned to a limited use ability and renamed to Adrenaline Rush. It's now tied to the dash action and gives temporary hit points when used. Primal Intuition, which already replaced a different ability compared to the original in Volosky, has been entirely removed. No bonus skill abilities are included at all. Orcs get the new ability Relentless Endurance that allows them to survive a knockout blow once a day. I do like this change for Eberron's Orcs, as they're usually not portrayed as the uncontrolled aggressors. The new names and abilities fit their physicality better, though Primal Intuition will be missed. Now the Shifter, structurally the lack of sub-races changed their presentation a lot, but fundamentally they are still the same. Before, each sub-race granted 2 abilities beyond the ability score, a skill and a shifting power. These skills have been wrapped together into a new ability called Bestial Instincts, though the overall pool of skill choices remains the same as the sub-races had as a group. The shifting ability is where you now make the choice of shifter lineage, and each of the lineages do more or less the same thing that the equivalent sub-races abilities did. There is a change to shifting's temporary hit point calculation. Instead of level plus constitution modifier temporary HP gain when you shift, you gain double your proficiency bonus. Usage has also changed from a short or long rest recharge to the limited usage per day that a lot of abilities in this book have, being based on proficiency bonus. So that might be more or fewer uses overall, depending on the cadence of the adventure. The Changeling has changed a bit more than the Shifter on a fundamental level. The Changeling Instincts ability is retained, and they actually gained one more option for skills to choose from: Performance. The main Shape Changer ability works the same way, except one line now reads, "You can also adjust your height and weight, and you can change your size between medium and small." This is pretty big, no pun intended. Now, gnomes, goblins, and halflings aren't safe from impersonation from changelings. The update also allows you to choose medium or small as the changeling character's base size. As an original concept artist for Eberron, Mark Tadine's website shows much of his concept pieces. He showed this art labeled Changeling and Halfling Family, which shows a halfling man, a changeling woman of the same size as him, and their changeling son. So there is some unpublished historical precedent for ideas around this. Obviously, the design team at the time decided not to go with allowing changelings to go to small size, though I believe, based on the concept art, they did consider it, and I see no issues here. Where a potential issue lies, though, is the changeling's type is no longer humanoid. Instead, it is Fae. I understand the change. Real-world fairy stories are filled with changeling children, swapped at birth by fairies, and fundamentally, this book is intended to be able to support any world in the multiverse of D&D, but Eberron had not established any sort of Fae connection before for changelings. Now, if you do go with this change, you do have a near foolproof check to see if someone is a changeling with simple and common low-level spells. Basically, any spell that only can target a humanoid, like Hold Person. If you can cast it on a person successfully, you know it's not a changeling, since it can only target humanoids. With the wide magic philosophy of Eberron, and Charm Person being a level 1 spell, the people of Khorvaire would have definitely figured this out, and use it for higher security situations where confirming identity is key. So if that is how things go, it would end up being a substantial change to the setting. The Aasimar were also updated in Monsters of the Multiverse, but unlike the other races we've looked at, it has new and variant subraces in Exploring Eberron, not an Eberron-related printing of the original mechanics. But as the updated rules affects those Eberron options, let's look at these changes. The new Monsters of the Multiverse mechanics drops the Fallen, Protector, and Scourge subraces entirely, and changes a couple other aspects too. Aasimar can now be medium or small, not just medium, so if you've dreamed of playing a halfling-themed Aasimar, that's now possible under the rules. With the lack of subraces, which before granted an ability starting at 3rd level, have been transitioned to a new ability called a Celestial Revelation. They still line up, with the new version just having you to select one of the options that the subraces previously granted. They are very similar to the previous versions, with changes to the recharge timing under the new proficiency-based system that we've talked about earlier. The general feel and story of the race hasn't really been changed like some of the other ancestries in the book, so you can continue to use Aasimar like you have been. Unless you're using one of the Exploring Eberron options, then you're going to need to do some adaptation work. So let's start talking about that. So these changes are only suggestions based on my own opinion. Your game needs may vary. I want to start with the 2 updated races that I wouldn't want to make any changes to make them fit better for Eberron. Those are the Shifter and the Orc. The Orc in Monsters of the Multiverse feels to me closer to Eberron Orcs than even the version appearing in Eberron Rising from the Last War. The Shifter 2 is nearly unchanged, so if you have an existing character, you just need to change how often shifting can happen and the temporary HP thing. Now, the Goblinoids, for the 3 of Goblins, Hobgoblins, and Bugbears, despite my earlier criticism, I have little to no concerns about the changes in mechanics. It's just the change in origin and the names of abilities that do concern me as being out of flavor with Eberron. Mechanically, I like the new goblins over either the Eberron Rising from the Last War version or even the Dakani Goblinoids from Exploring Eberron to cover both groups of Dar. Now, I changed the name of the Fey Ancestry ability to relate to the Ul Dakan, the Goblinoid dreamscape that connects all of the Dar to memories of the Dakani Empire. Though most modern Goblinoids are no longer strongly connected to its ancient power, that remaining connection could be what gives Goblinoids advantage on saving throws against charm effects. A name like Dreamscape Recollection, or something to that effect, is what I would rename the ability. Hobgoblins also have the Fey Gift ability. That I would rename, borrowing from the Dakani Hobgoblin Guide in Exploring Eberron, to Lead by Example, but keep the mechanic unchanged. Okay, so that sorts the goblins, but what about our other Fey-shifted race, the Changeling? Well, I overall really like the changes other than the type change itself. Taking it away and changing them back to humanoid does slightly nerf their power level, as now they are effectively immune to spells and abilities that only target humanoids. The nerf would only be slight. In 5th edition's rule set, as of now, there are just a few over 10 spells that can only target humanoids. That's a pretty limited number of spells to be immune to, though they do tend to be pretty good ones. Charm Person, Dominate Person, Hold Person, to name a few. My thought would be to add another small buff to the Changeling. They are Fey type by the rules, but they can choose to allow themselves to be treated as humanoid for the purposes of magic spells if they choose. That gets around organizations using Charm or Hold Person as Changeling checks. They just allow it to hit them. And it also lets them to get benefits from, say, Calm Emotions, used by a party member. But they can't be dominated or magic jarred in combat. Another possibility or addition would be to change out the Fey typing with Monstrosity. It's not the best named type for a Changeling, but it would match them up with their doppelganger cousins. There are no spells currently that can only target Fey or Monstrosity types specifically, so swapping them is more or less mechanically the same. Of course, all of this extra work might be moot once we have the larger 5th edition revision in a couple years, as these spells could be completely restructured. Okay, the last adaptation I want to cover are the changes to the Aasimar subraces in Exploring Eberron to better fit with the updated Aasimar mechanics. Of the 4 Aasimar options in Exploring Eberron, the 2 planar Aasimar were set up as variants. Their mechanics being replaced pretty much still function in the same way, even if they have been juggled around. So the work to get them functional is basically nil, though you may wish to line up the rules for their cantrips to line up with the changes made to the other races in Monsters of the Multiverse, allowing you to select your casting stats. The Court and Seeker Aasimar, Aasimar tied to the Undying Court, and Blood of All Religions, respectively, are sub-races, so they need a little more redesign to make work under the Multiverse revision. The Court sub-race adds Fey Ancestry, Trance, the Elvish language as a bonus, and an ability that is the equivalent to the Celestial Revelations on the updated Aasimar. I'd go about adapting it in 2 steps. Guidance from the Past can easily become an additional Celestial Revelation option, so that would move the usage and timing information of the ability out of the text of the ability itself. In fact, I don't mind an Aasimar themed on a Halfling Mask Weaver using the same ability to connect to spirits through a Talenta Spirit Mask, and taking advantage of the new ability of Aasimar to be small-sized. For the rest of the ability, that would need to be restructured into an Aasimar variant, like those planar Aasimar, but replacing other abilities. I'd probably go with replacing the Light cantrip, as that is only marginal as something for an Undying Court related Aasimar, and is at a low power level overall, about equivalent to Fey Ancestry and Trance. Both would need to be updated to the new versions of those abilities as well, including the weapon and tool proficiencies now granted by Trance. Then, with current language rules, there's no real need to worry about giving them Elven as a bonus language. The other subrace, the Seekers, Shroud of Life and Death, can be ported over as a Celestial Revelation. However, the calculation of bonus necrotic damage will need to be redone, likely based on proficiency bonus instead of level, as that recalculation was done on the other Aasimar subraces as well, but otherwise is straightforward, following the path set out by the transition of the subraces from the Volo's Guide to Monsters of the Multiverse. As for the changes to monsters, the impact on the world-building aspect of them is pretty minimal. Eberron ignored much of what was included for the Forgotten Realms, and in Volo's Guide and Mordenkainen's tome anyway. The biggest changes are mechanical. Many spellcaster stat blocks are using fewer actual spells. Instead, they have written out abilities that mimic spells. In my opinion, the simplification of NPC spellcasting at the table is a good step and will result in a lot fewer DMs accidentally missing aspects of a monster's threat. There are a few monsters in the book that are more Eberron-y than others, so I do want to cover them specifically. I wanted to cover the Annis Hag due to them being pretty important to the setting, as one of the daughters of Sora Kell is an Annis Hag, after all. They received a change regarding non-magical weapon resistances. That ability was dropped entirely, but their hit points were upgraded greatly. That won't affect how they should operate within the lore of the world, but make them less accidentally deadly if the group lacks a full complement of magic weapons. This construct counts as an Eberron-specific creature due to its lineage sourcing through two Eberron creatures, the Arcane Ballista and the Arbalester Homunculus. These filtered into new designs, names, miniatures, and additions, and ended with this Clockwork Oaken Bolter. Here's another creature that was affected by the same removal of non-magical damage resistance, like the Annis Hag, and had its hit points increased by a lot. Its harpoon attack was also edited, splitting the reeling in of hooked enemies into its own separate ability, and that should help it be easier to run. The rest of its numerical stats and abilities remain the same. Dinosaurs are pretty much running all over the Talenta Plains, so I wanted to mention that the dinos included in Volo's Guide, Brontosaurus deinonychus, Dimetrodon, Hadrosaurus, Quetzalcoatlus, Stegosaurus, and Velociraptor, are basically unchanged. You can run them with confidence if that's the only book you have and haven't picked up the new Monsters of the Multiverse book. So, like any time a new D&D book or edition comes out, you are not required to switch to it. If you're having fun with your campaign now, that's great. I'm sure there are still folk playing Eberron with just the core D&D 3rd edition books plus the campaign setting book. Just like there are folk still happily playing 1st edition AD&D in their homebrew settings. The question to ask is, will this new book enhance your game? And I think I come down on the side of Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse being a good addition to an Eberron game played with the 5th edition rules. Even more so if you've never got around to picking up a copy of Volo's Guide to Monsters or Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Even if you have one, but not the other. The impact does diminish a bit if you do own both. However, one of the benefits of the new book is that it's supposed to be fully compatible with, and setting us up for the major 5th edition revision coming in 2024. As stated in the Future of D&D panel,
this new volume, Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, is a treasure trove of creature-related material that has appeared previously in other products for 5th edition, but are now all being brought together into one book and updated. We thought, not only can we bring all of this into one place for this gift set, but we can also update some of this material. We're already working on our 50th anniversary plans, which will include those new versions of the core books. And as we're working on that update, we thought now's our opportunity to update some of the material that people can use now to already give a feel of where we're headed over the next few years with Dungeons & Dragons.
So the updates in Monsters of the Multiverse should not need further updates when the revision arrives. Though, who knows? The Fiend Folio was similarly a transitional book, and it still required a few more tweaks to make it 3.5 compatible. I predict when the revised 5th edition books come out in 2024, we'll likely see changes to Player's Handbook races, much like we saw in the Monsters Multiverse, elimination of sub-races. Drow will likely be separated into its own race, for example, and most other sub-races will just be small mechanical decisions made when creating the character. Also, most, but not all, abilities tied to short rests seem to be going away, both from races and from classes. I don't think short rests are being completely eliminated from the game, based on recent new subclasses published in the last year. If I am correct about the larger, overarching changes to drop sub-races, which does mean all of the Dragonmark sub-races from Eberron Rising from the Last War will need heavy errata to function correctly, and the other Rising from the Last War races that have not yet been updated, like the Warforged and Kalashtar, may also require update documents to get them in line with everything else. That's not even looking into DM's Guild material that most would consider more or less official, like Exploring Eberron and Morgrave Miscellany. The class options and races in those may require updates, and I haven't seen any news on errata or updates for them from Keith Baker or their other creators yet, though that might happen closer to the release of the larger revision. But I do like dropping sub-races as a thing from lore. Different kinds of dwarves and elves always felt a little off for Eberron. I think the changes in Monsters of the Multiverse are overall positive for the growth of D&D in general. I do wish errata documents were going to be made available for these updates, but that doesn't look like something that Wizards of the Coast has plans for. When the wider revision comes, I do hope conversion documents are available for material that relies on core game mechanics like Dragonmark sub-races and similar. I want to hear from you about what you think about the Monsters of the Multiverse changes to the Eberron races, and the potential changes coming down the pike for the anniversary revision. The next video is re-entering the Library of Kornberg for an introductory work on Korvar's main religion, the Sovereign Host and their rivals, the Dark Six. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a thing. As well, don't forget that Eberron Archaeologist is on Instagram and Twitter. I have a feature on Instagram where we show off an Eberron mini every week, usually ones I haven't featured in a video yet. And both accounts post channel news and whenever a new video goes live. Links to both are in the video description.